We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.
Like Vasquez said in Aliens, let's rock. If you're new to the tribe, Rad's across the table, Rich is behind the mix, and my name is Yanni Bullmeister. We are Unity Gym experts at turning driven people into athletes. This episode is brought to you by the Unified Movement System, the only online program that balances strength, flexibility, and fitness in an efficient 60-minute workout so you can unleash your inner athlete. Get daily coaching by us, plus our epic gym and home UMS programs, extensive exercise library, private coaching group, and weekly coaching calls. As a valued listener, use the link in the description to get your first month free. Before we get started, big warm welcome. If you're watching on the Unity Gym YouTube channel, remember to hit that like button to support the channel and subscribe if you like what you see. I'm super excited to announce that joining us today, we have Aaron McKenzie from Origin of Energy and Phil White from ADPT Physio.
And for those of you that didn't know, Aaron started working in the fitness industry in 1998, first as a martial artist, then moving into face-to-face personal training, then small group training. Now he splits his time running Origin of Energy, both face-to-face online, where he specializes in movement and lifestyle coaching. Aaron has managed his own gym in Bondi, coached professional athletes, taught international workshops, and certified personal trainers with his own education courses. And there's probably no one in this world that I've had a longer friendship with that share more in common with. Aaron and I, Aaron's a month older than me. We went to high school together. We met in year 7.
And he's slightly better looking than you.
Yeah, slightly, only slightly. We met in year 7. We moved out of home together when we were 18 or 19, straight after high school. We started martial arts together. He introduced me to capoeira. I introduced him to Kung Fu. He tried to get me to become a personal trainer with him back in 1998. But I was too fixated on becoming a movie star. And so I followed in his footsteps 5 years later. And it's good to have you on the show, man. Good to see you again.
Great to be here.
And you forgot the most important accolade. He's the only human being other than your wife who's managed to live with you happily for 5 years.
Yeah, we did live together.
Oh, it was pretty much that long.
Almost that long, yeah. I don't know how I use the
Wow,
word
that's
happily.
going back, huh?
I use the word happily very loosely.
Well, no, I mean, we were 18 when we moved out of home together, so 43 now.
Yeah.
Good times. Welcome to the show, Azza.
Yeah, thank you.
We've
Thanks
got
for having me.
welcome to the show, Phil.
Cheers, always good to be here.
Yeah. Yanni, we've got a good question for you today. Yanni,
Yeah, this is continuing in our 2021 wrap up Unity Gym Tribe Q&A podcast series. So we have put the questions out to our tribe.
And before we go into this question, I just want to frame just for a minute why it's Aaron that's answering this question and not anybody else. Out of anyone I don't know anybody that walks the talk as much as Aaron does. He's somebody that has inspired me to make massive changes in my health because him and I grew up together and did so much together. And then as we went through our 20s, I could see him just becoming healthier than me, and I needed to learn some of
better
that.
in every way.
And there was a period of time. Do you remember when I became a personal trainer? Because I was about 5 years behind you, and I was calling you up every night. Azza, how do you do this? What do you cook with that? How do you do that? And you said, man, you're gonna have to just start coming to my gym and training with me. I can't take these calls all the time.
And then you harassed all the staff.
Yeah, that's right. Then I harassed all the staff as well. But no, it's had a massive impact on my health, which has then in turn, trickled down through what we do at Unity Gym and with Yanni as well. But when I've ever asked you about what it is that you do, Aaron, you've always said that whatever I do to pass on to my clients, I try on myself for 6 months first. And that's a really big thing in the health and fitness industry. There's and when you say you try it, you don't just try it, you do it. I mean, recently you wanted to try the carnivore diet for yourself, and for 6 months you were 95% animal products, doing nose to tail, basically. So not just going to the shop and buying cold cuts and T-bone steaks, but buying a lamb and eating every part of it.
Yeah, it was a whole year.
Yeah, it was a whole year, was it? Yeah.
Well, it was out of that 9 months was 100% strict, which was just 1 body of beef, 2 bodies of lamb, nothing else.
In 9 months.
And that's all I ate.
Yeah.
Salt, magnesium, nothing else. And then after the 9 months, I had a bit of honey, added a few things in which I can talk you through. But yeah, I just wanted to test that out. Does it work?
Yep. And just before Yanni asked the question, because I think this is really relevant, why did you do that? What was your motivation behind doing that?
I had an autoimmune condition.
Yep.
had like inflammatory processes that were occurring in my body, and I just couldn't quite shake them. Like I'm really, healthy, as you know, and really conscious of what I eat and consume and everything that I'm doing, and I just couldn't quite shake them. And so I thought, I'd heard about it for probably around 5 years. Mentioned people saying, oh, this works really well for these type of conditions, and I always thought it was a bit too extreme. I always had the logic that, you let the animals be the nutrient condensers and you consume them, so you're basically outsourcing that. And that made sense to me, but I still, in the back of my mind, it's like, oh, you need a little bit of vegetables and fruit for probiotics and, just some diversity in your diet, and we're omnivores and all of that. So I kind of dismissed the extremeness of it. And there's all the enjoyable so-called healthy paleo foods that everyone kind of gets into. So you switch off all your kind of normal sweets and you switch to, cacao and coconut and all these things, which are great, and they're most likely a better option. But I found that I just still had this kind of inflammation in my body. And then that worked,
It worked, yeah. You got
like
rid of
it probably took
inflammation.
totally.
Yeah. And just the last thing that I'll say, just to frame all this before you do the question, when you refer to the animals being the processors, for those that don't understand what Aaron means, a lot of people will talk about that you must get these nutrients from vegetables and there's no other way to get it. But what you mean by the animals being the processors is that the animals that have, several stomachs can process these nutrients better, and then we can extract them from
and that's just efficiency, like in any model. Like you're just trying to outsource that work. Why do it yourself if you're going to let somebody else do it? And they condense that nutrition, and all, like they're just like batteries basically. They're just harvested sunlight with all the micro and macronutrients combined through that sunlight process. So sun shining on the earth, photosynthesis, water falling from the sky, them consuming the growth that occurs through photosynthesis, and the relationship with the bacteria and the microorganisms and the minerals in the soil going into what they're eating, and then converting that into their flesh, their fat, their bones, their tissues. And, I've known, and said this all along, one of my key statements to people is that a human being is an expression of a healthy ecosystem. And if you really think about what that is, like if you want to be healthy, you've got to attach yourself to a healthier ecosystem. So if you kind of just eat processed food, you're eating, you don't have nice air, not drinking good water, then if you want optimal health, you've got to shift that. So for me, it's like, well, I can just simplify this. One body of beef, 2 bodies of lamb. I know where they come from. Whereas, all these people promoting superfoods, they're vegan or whatever, they don't have a clue where their food comes from. They're eating from all over the planet, and they're completely dependent on a system that doesn't care about their health. It just cares about profits, like margins, and volume, economies of scale, so that, how much can I produce and how much of a margin can I make on that cacao and this next superfood on, transporting this from one place on the earth to another place and stockpiling it. When you think of food products, they're a form of energy that's been condensed and just put on a shelf that way they can keep making a profit off it. Whereas a living ecosystem and a food that's alive, you consume it when it's living, or when you're not processing it to the point that it's losing a lot of its value, and that allows for you to have that optimal health.
Just on the practicalities of it, with sourcing the beef and the lamb, how did you go about doing that?
Well, I'm fortunate because I've been into this for a long time. Like I've got a lot of connections there with farmers and people within maybe a 3-hour radius of Sydney. So for probably at least, most of the time that I've been doing this, I've been thinking in that way. Food's always been a big part of movement for me. Like it was just the obvious thing that it had to, or even before I became a personal trainer, and I was very much inclined to choose better options for what I put in my body. And then once I kind of realized that you just want to get more connected to source. So I have some really good friends that are farmers, so I can just go to their farm and, want that one there and break that body down. And I just had basically a chest freezer, so I could get quarter body at a time delivered to me from him. And I used to give him all of my stainless steel containers. So it was also, the reason why I did it was wanted to test it out, but also just to see if it was possible, and also you know, like you hear everybody, oh, you know, your diet or whatever is better for the earth, it's better for health, it's better that. And I just wanted to be as extreme as I could and test it and see how viable it was. And it's, yeah, I don't think anyone can argue with it when you're doing it to that extremeness. Whether they want to or not, it's their choice. But, you know, in terms of being able to have that connection to an ecosystem and knowing where your food comes from and understanding that there's no waste in that system, in terms of packaging, processing, marketing, transporting, refrigerating, everything. I was just farm, processed, me, freezer, eat it over 9 months. That's it, done.
Yeah. And eating nose to tail is the big one there as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're
Can't
eating
just
the
get
whole
that
animal,
one.
you know,
Well,
using all the bones.
let's ask the question now,
Yeah.
so that they know what they're in for. So this one comes, it's 2 questions came through out of the myriad of questions, and I narrowed it down to as many as we could get for one podcast a fortnight. And when these 2 questions came in, I was like, we have to get Aaron on this podcast. So the first one comes from Blakely Hernage from the UMS online coaching group, and Blakely's one of our administrators. He's from the US. He's asked, are organ meats underrated or overrated? And what are the best meats to eat? And is meat unhealthy at all? Like, is it true that meat is sort of, there's a lot of people saying that, you know, you've got to go vegan or vegetarian.
I'd love to know Aaron's opinion on that one because, yeah, if anybody's going to answer that question, if anybody's going to ask that question, maybe we should start with that. Is meat unhealthy for you?
And then the second question, which I actually think we can bring into the same discussion, who's come from Blakely as well, from the UMS online coaching group, has asked, should you really avoid polyunsaturated fatty acids, i.e. canola oil, sunflower oil, etc., and why?
But
so we can get to that.
Yeah, well, that's all, they're all linked
They're
anyway.
very
similar.
intertwined. Yeah,
We can start with, is meat bad for you? Because anybody that's listening, there are people out there that really believe that meat's bad for you, and there's going to be people listening to this thinking, oh my God, 9 months, you know, with nothing but animal products.
How many animals
But,
died?
but how,
I killed 3 animals, guys.
Yeah. And
that's
how,
it. In 12 months, I killed 3 animals.
And how often
How many did you kill? That's the question.
Yeah. And how often did you get your bloods tested?
I only tested 3 times in that period.
Yeah, so only every 3 months, which is pretty good.
Yeah, like I did it for that. Like most people do
have.
it maybe every couple of years or until they're really sick. That's like, oh, maybe
when the doctor tells them that you've got a foot in the grave.
I wanted to know what it did and what happened.
And what did you notice? Was there any changes in your markers?
Everything improved except what people think is bad.
Which is cholesterol.
Yeah, went through the roof.
Yep.
And, you know, like people can argue and have assumptions about that. But in and of itself, cholesterol is very beneficial for the body. And then you're looking at LDL, HDL ratios, and if your HDL is high, then there's no issue.
What was your HDL when it went through the roof?
HDL. I know total was 10, but my HDL was like way above.
Yeah.
Triglycerides were non-existent.
Yeah.
My fasting insulin was non-existent. It's funny because I look like a type 1 diabetic because my insulin was so low, but it just wasn't using it, you know, with it. So, and I felt awesome. There was one problematic thing, and that really kind of, you know, just to cut through it and get to that, is that I think everyone's different, and there was a point when the electrolytes became an issue, and that was my only beef with it.
Yeah, all right.
That was the only thing that I had a problem with was the cramps.
Yeah.
But that was easily remedied with just had some raw honey, which, you know, is technically carnivore.
Yeah, right.
but you know, and I've added, you know, I just have white rice, have fruit, and I don't have a lot of plant matter, but I do have carbohydrates. I don't think carbohydrates in and of themselves are a problem. You know, everyone's really kind of hell-bent on demonizing them. They, you know, like if you're having them and you're using up the glycogen that's within your liver and in your muscles every day and you're just replenishing that, there's no issue. It's the issue is obviously if you've got excess and it's spilling over
and
into
using it.
Yeah, well, it's just, you know, you're just getting hyperglycemia from excess spilling over. So that's damaging you. Meat itself, I think it's, you know, it's very nutrient dense. I mean, that's why we're here. There's no way we'd be here without eating meat. I mean, fire and meat are our 2 biggest things that make us human, you know, and our ability to manage those things. You know, people have this concept that we're hunter and gatherers and we go and fight animals with our bare hand, and it's just like, no, we used our brains. there's a reason why we're here. That's the wife. I wouldn't call for anyone else.
That's all right. She's gonna be. You're gonna have to explain why you
Yeah.
didn't answer now. For anyone listening, that's Aaron's wife.
Yeah, the
Pauline.
boss is called. If there's anyone that's going to stop a podcast, it's my boss called.
You're not ranting.
I
about
have a Russian wife, guys. So
It's like double. He gets really scared. You can see the look on his face. His
there's only
skin
one
started
thing
turning white.
only one thing that scares me.
So you would, on that note with electrolytes, would you then not recommend what you did for someone like Phil who's training for a what are you training
Ironman.
half Ironman, or would you say that you can compensate for that with other things? You know, you got to.
No, look, you can do it. People can do it, and there's obviously heaps of people out there that are doing it and staying carnivore. I just don't. I wouldn't recommend it personally.
Proof. Photo proof. Yeah. And you would say that you like it worked for the reasons that you did it, or was it just more it worked?
It worked very well. It worked for the main issues that I had. For inflammation, amazing.
Yeah, right.
For everything else except for the electrolyte issue and the problems they only came on. They started to come on at about the 3-month mark.
Yep.
So all it was kind of just mild kind of muscular cramps, but then they got worse and worse. And then what happens over time is that you get electrolyte deficiency to the point where you can feel it's messing with your heart rate.
Yep.
And you're sleeping. And that's
Just
where,
making
and
that
about,
close.
about at the 9-month mark, that's when I felt it. And that's why I integrated carbohydrates and putting them back in just allowed for that insulin surge. And the reason why that's so important is because insulin allows for you to retain electrolytes.
Yeah.
So if you don't have it, and like if you're doing it for short periods, it's not an issue at all. But for long periods without insulin, and I'm talking that long, going in ketosis over and over again. I mean, you're going in and out because when you're having, I did it extreme in the sense that I wanted to do it for a set amount. So I was only eating 800 grams a day of meat, which isn't a lot.
Yeah.
But that was inclusive of animal fat. So the fat is very energy dense. So I was still having around 2,000 calories a day. I did lose a little bit of weight on it, but I just wanted to test the whole thing. Like, could I live on this and for how long? And it was kind of a preempt to everything that's happening now. Like if I go out, if anyone gets stuck in the wild, what do you know you can eat?
Animals,
Tree bark.
You have, if you look at the plant kingdom, you don't have a clue.
Yeah.
There's like unless you're a local to the area, there's just no way. Like most of the plant things are going to kill you. It's only the domesticated plants that we can actually make use of. Whereas if you kill an animal and you eat the flesh, once you get past the skin, you're going to survive. It's not going to kill you. Whereas plants, and that's why we have the culinary art. So you have to be very respectful of that. Like all the traditional cultures, soaked, sprouted, fermented, had all these different methods of processing plant foods to make them digestible.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. That's why we're omnivores, and we made use of the environments that we're in, and we figured it out with, trial and error and, people around us dying. And so we could be here.
Bob didn't
But
do well.
still, it's happening at a mass level now.
Oh man, big time. So we're all
we're still trial and error figuring things out.
Big time. But like adding back in a certain amount of carbohydrates periodically definitely allows you to retain the electrolytes better, and then that got rid of the side effect that I had with it. In terms of my health, like all my blood markers looked awesome. The cholesterol thing, I went and got a CAC scan done, a coronary artery calcium score done.
I was
and
just
I had
about
0.
to ask that. Yeah.
I've got a video that kind of details the whole process.
So that measures
online.
the elasticity of the artery for everyone who doesn't
and any
know,
calcium buildup.
and any
So they're
calcium
doing
buildup.
the scan and they can see any, and it was none there. Like I've had a high fat diet most of my life.
And this is what I meant before, and I'm saying this for our audience. What I meant about, I don't know anybody that has as much skin in the game as you that really tests this stuff on yourself.
Yeah.
And because I've known you for so long, I mean, that's your story of 9 months on the carnivore diet, but I've watched you consume what a lot of people would consider not high amounts in terms of the total amount of calories or the total amount of food that you're eating in a day, but out of the calories that you are eating, a lot of them are coming from animal products for
20
decades
years
now.
Yeah.
And I've asked you questions that the whole time.
Yeah.
I've watched what your health looks like from the outside, and you've shown me your bloods and talked me through it. So there's very few, well, there's actually no one that I know, no one that comes close to your experience of doing this on yourself, getting the level of testing that you've been doing. So, you know,
Now
maybe
it's normal though. Now most people are, like a lot of the people in our world now, in the health world and fitness world, are into it.
Yeah.
But
you were doing it when it wasn't cool, though, were you?
No
you were
one-
having raw eggs smoothies before.
Remember
it was
the
cool.
25 eggs a day?
Yeah. Well, I used to do 30 raw eggs a day,
Yeah.
kilo of raw meat, and 3 liters of raw milk. That was when I was.
That was when
trying
you
to
were
get
doing
as
the
big,
bodybuilding.
really
trying to get as
extreme,
big as I.
Yeah.
as
You
I
got up
could.
to 90
Yeah.
kilos?
No, I got to 100.
You got to
I got to
100?
99.8,
Beefcake.
and Gus beat me.
Gus beat you, did he?
Because we used to weigh in,
Yeah.
and we'd just crack raw eggs on our bottom teeth and swallow them
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And one day we were like that close, and it's like, okay, let's just have some more raw milk.
Yeah.
So we were there just trying to drink as much as we could to just get our weight to try and get over.
Oh, that's
Oh,
gold.
that's
Okay,
During
so
this time, sorry.
Yeah.
Did you change the training much? Like,
Yeah.
because-
Well, I found like around at the beginning, the training was pretty much normal, but then you get to a point where you feel a bit more depleted. So then you can't maintain that output.
Yeah.
So I just reduced the volume. I kept the intensity if it was a short workout. I kept the volume if it was a lower intensity workout.
Yeah.
So you have to reduce that. As an adaptation, I think you like. There's definitely people out there that get away with it. I mean, you only have to look at the carnivore world now, and there's some people there that don't even have the organ meats, whatever, and they just go hardcore, and they look like they're doing great. But for me, that's what I found I needed to do, was just reduce that a bit. But it's funny, like my clarity in my mind, focus, concentration, all of that was just like amazing. But once the sleep kind of issues started to come in, then I knew I had to change something, and I'm just trying to figure out, what's the best thing to do. So I kind of just kept reading and studying, and then but just adding that carbohydrate really made a huge difference. But I found that once I did a period after that where I was doing like 500 grams of white rice a day as a test. And the funny thing with doing that is my meat consumption almost doubled by doing that. I put on lots of weight and my weight went up, and but the appetite increased dramatically just by having the white rice. Like it was huge.
That's interesting.
So like I was doing fine. I felt satiated every day on that 800 grams every day. And then as soon as I put that in there, it wasn't just eating more of that. I had an appetite to eat more meat as well.
That's interesting. Why do you think that happened?
I'm sure it's to do with insulin, and then just it's always that like I don't know, if you eat rice, you always feel like you're full, but you could eat more. It's that kind of
find
feeling.
that with most
Whereas
carbohydrates.
meat, you get to a point if you feel full, like there's no way you could put anything else in your mouth. Like you just
your body's just like, whoa.
no, that's
So
enough.
let's go to organ
Organ
meats. And then also maybe what are the best cuts of meat to eat from a practical standpoint and from a health standpoint. So Blakely wants to know specifically, are organ meats underrated or overrated? Like should you try and eat them?
I think they're underrated.
Yep.
By the masses. I think they were something that all traditional cultures valued, and we undervalued them. But a lot of people now are probably a couple of generations away from it being something that they grew up with, whereas our grandparents all would have, it's just normal.
I remember going to friends' dinners and they would have kidneys as the dinner or liver, and I used to always go,
And,
because
like, for
we were
European-
kind of raised a little bit as vegetarians because of our dad.
Yeah.
But I do remember it back then, 20, 30 years ago, you know. So, I think maybe it's just slipped out of, I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I think that a lot of people now are squeamish, and it's this whole processed food, packaged food, and everything being tasty. It's and just marketed in a way, and then you get an addiction to it.
Everything has to look
and
perfect too. You know, it's like they have to colour meat in butchers so that people will eat it.
And
if
so-
it's slightly grey, people freak out. You know,
Yeah.
which is
And if you
kind
the
of the
whole,
colour it
I mean,
goes.
really the whole processed packaged food thing just ruined everyone's appetites for real food. And it just programmed him into having, breakfast cereals and breakfast, just having it as something that's like, to me, every meal is just a meal. What I have for breakfast, what I have for lunch, what I have for dinner, it's just a meal.
Yeah,
But
I'm the
most
same.
people, like you mentioned, maybe have meat for breakfast. They're like, well, no way, you couldn't do that, and
Yeah.
it seems kind of crazy to them. but really it's just a meal.
Yeah.
And if you're sitting down and relaxing, but it ties into the whole culture. Like we've spoken about before, that kind of high time preference. Everyone's in a hurry, everyone's in a rush. They just got to have something quick and have it quickly and get out of the house, or, you know, throw something down their throat and not even think about it. Whereas if you take the time to prepare food, sit down, chew every mouthful and digest it, then there's you know, you're going to experience that and it feels good and you get a benefit. Whereas when you're just searching for quick energy, you're just reaching to grab things that are convenient. And they might give you energy and they satisfy your taste buds, you feel a bit better, but in the long run, you're just gradually depleting yourself from all of these nutrients that are there in those nutrient-dense foods, in the organ meats. Do people have to have them? I don't think they have to, but you'd have to have, you know, like, it's like I said before, you know, like it's just a condensed form of food. It is completely underrated because the animals, that's all they're doing is condensing it. And the organ meats are, you know, the storehouse of the nutrition. Like people go, oh, your liver's its an organ of detoxification. No, it's a storehouse of nutrition. It's what your body calls on when it needs things. So when you're consuming that body of work. The animal's out there, you know, ruminating all day, condensing that grass and that sunlight for you. And then when you consume those organ meats, you're just getting, you know, highly concentrated nutrition for your body. And like now we have the whole freeze drying thing. So you've got Ancestral Health and you've got Heart and Soil and a lot of these companies doing the freeze dried ones. So it's very easy. I just have the organ meats. I like them. You know, I don't have an issue with them. So I'll usually have about 100 grams of liver a day or some kidney a day, and I'll just sear it lightly. When I did the carnivore diet, I did probably 75% of what I was eating raw, which is pretty extreme for a lot of people. But
and so when you say nose to tail, just
everything.
Explain that. That's everything. So you literally eat the eyeballs.
Yeah.
Wow.
The head if you can get it. But a lot, like now you can't get a lot of the brains and all those things just because of the way the processing works.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is one company that does a really good thing called Property Meats. I'll drop them because I really believe in what they're doing. So they do on-site processing. So they have a series of trucks that go around on site and actually process animals there. And then another friend of mine, Ethical Farmers, that's where I get most of my meat.
So it's kind of like a mobile abattoir sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, one of the biggest problems that we had in Australia and America was the centralization of processing of animals. Yeah. Because it just got rid of all small farmers and made it impossible. So it's get big or get out. Yeah, and it's the same with the whole food industry. That people don't understand that, you know, they're eating a commodity. They're eating a product. Yeah. That, you know, like food is a technology in the sense that, you know, when you could take something that was perishable and put it on a shelf for 3 months. Yeah. Like that is amazing. And you could eat it and not die. That's even more amazing. But then you can stockpile it. So it becomes a resource that you can move across distance. Yeah. And it's pretty phenomenal in the sense of being able to keep people alive. But what cost? You know, at what cost for our own health? And then when you centralize, you know, or when we centralize the abattoirs, basically, you know, unless you can make it a viable margin to get your bodies to the abattoir, like to a large one and get a decent cut there, like it just doesn't make it viable. Whereas if you've got one in every town and you've got a small farmer and you're only producing X amount of cattle and you can just walk your cattle there, it just takes out all those overheads and it just keeps it local and keeps it decentralized, which I think, you know, there's more people that are switching onto that now. But there's so many regulations and everything like with abattoirs. Like this group that set up Property Meats, which is awesome, you know, a doctor, a vet, a lawyer, a farmer, they got together to form that, which is really cool. Like I really believe in that as a way forward for people to get more connected to their food supply, to really understand that, you know, what they're eating and where it's coming from. And that has huge value for your health. Just in terms of, just look at what's happened in the last, you know, 2 years in terms of food security. If you know where it's coming from, you have a personal relationship with someone and you know that the money you're offering to them and you're paying to them is making that ecosystem more viable, more secure, so it can keep producing food for you for longer. Like if that's not an investment in your future, I don't know what is. Yeah. Like that's that, and your own health, like, and that you know that life force energy, whatever you want to call it, is coming through that ecosystem and you're ingesting that and expressing that with your everyday today movements. I mean, that's just beautiful. Like that's life right there. But to consume stuff that you just don't have a clue that's sitting in a box in plastic, and it's, you know, you just like, and it's coming from everywhere. You don't know where it's coming from. I mean,
Some of it being shipped to China, packaged and
oh
brought
yeah,
back from
exactly,
China.
exactly. And then, you know,
Yeah.
it's and then, you know, like all the ingredients under a certain amount don't have to be listed. And then you spoke about the vegetable oils. I mean,
So that's the next question. Let's get
Yeah.
into that one now. So the second question actually comes from Blakely again as well. I'll just mention it again. He wants to know, should you really avoid polyunsaturated fatty acids, i.e. canola oil, sunflower oil, etc., and why?
yeah. Well, I mean, if you think of the whole energy thing, I mean, it's great that we can condense that energy. We're using factory farming to be able to harvest grain, seeds, nuts, legumes, whatever, and condense them into this oil that's, you know, that's a huge amount of energy. But when they're doing that and they're processing, the process of that is, you know, it's a chemical process. And then what you're getting after is something that's completely denatured, and it's pro-inflammatory for your body, without a doubt. Like, it's just, and it's devoid of any nutrition that's beneficial for you. So you ingesting all of those polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are highly inflammatory in the body, and then you only have to look at the correlation between nutrition and cancer, heart disease, all the things, obesity, diabetes, all of these things that have come up with the introduction of processed foods. And that the foundation of that is these processed seed and vegetable oils, which, you know, like the demonization of animal fats, which are stable and, you know, highly digestible and beneficial for humans. And it all comes down to this whole thing that thinking that animal fat causes heart disease. When you have millions of years of evolution and humans consuming animal fat, it's a stored battery basically that allows you to live for longer, and, you know, and allows the animal to live for longer by storing fat on their body. Somehow that's become bad for us, and it's killing us now. But these seeds that we've never been able to compress in the way that we are now with machinery and with the chemical process is somehow healthy for us. It, you know, just without even knowing any of the biochemical, you know, kind of structure of what's happening there. Just thinking of it in that way, like one is completely unnatural and unprecedented, and the other one has been going on for millions of years. So which do you think is going to be more beneficial for the human digestive tract and for the human body?
Also, there must be something in the idea that our digestive system evolves with the foods that we eat over
we have
time.
access to.
And then, so we've evolved over tens of thousands of years to consume foods that were found in nature. And, you know, it's only been in the last 100 years or less where we've just had this radical change in the way that foods are put on our plates. And that was, you know, where we started to see this, you know, emergence of obesity. You know, it's quite funny when you look at pictures from, even we were watching a couple of film clips from the 80s the other day, and every single one of the musicians would be called anorexic today. They just look, people just look different
Skinny,
back then, you know, and we get, people like us get called, Yanni and I get called skinny by our friends. And it's like, we're not skinny at all. This isn't skinny.
This is just healthy.
This is just,
It is sad. It is sad. And then what's accepted as normal now is, you know, an inflamed person.
I actually saw, I literally scrolled past a post from Women's Health on Instagram yesterday, and the headline was, "This is normal," and it was of a fat chick in her underwear. And she was like decently overweight. Like, well, by the old score, she'd be bordering on obese. And
it's average and it's normal by today's standards because that's what is everywhere. Is it right? Is it healthy? I don't know. You know, like that's everyone's choice. I guess it's a free choice. But the thing is that it's what's convenient. And it comes down to, you know, like what's, like I always think of the problems that we have and think of our monetary system and think of inflation, because as an example, someone who just watches Netflix, eats processed food, is renting and just living paycheck to paycheck and just kind of doing that cycle, they're not really going to notice inflation. Because they're not living and connecting with real things in terms of like real food, because the price of real food is going to go up, like, and meat's going to go through the roof with all the carbon taxes and stuff that are coming. But then also, you know, if you're having to buy a house, obviously, you know, in Sydney, it's doubled in the last 2 years to buy a house. Like, it's just crazy in the eastern suburbs, especially. It's but so you really, like, if you're trying to do more than the average, you really notice it. But if you're just there, you're happy with eating the processed food and just eating all this crap, you just don't really realize how much things are changing and how you're able to just live what you think is a normal life, but really you're only able to get these foods so cheap. One, they're subsidized, and two is economies of scale. So the whole industrial complex that condenses these foods is just on such a big scale, and they can do things in such a high volume that they can keep the prices down, and there's not really a lot of nutrition in there. What there is just all they're trying to do is just make their small margins. So you're getting things that aren't really of value. You're just getting products. You're not actually getting real food.
It's actually interesting. I watched a podcast on this topic, on the inflation topic in America. What's happening right now that it's just leaking out that food companies are actually putting less and less and less in the same size packages. Yeah, because inflation's going up, so they can keep their margins. And so they're sneaking it where it used to be 250 grams, but now 240.
But the whole food industry, like all grains, everything, that's all subsidized. And you only have to look after the Second World War, what happened, and that's why people are eating the way they are, is because they wanted food to be cheap for everybody, but they put all these subsidies into these companies that were producing processed food. Yeah. So it made it more viable. So, and that was like the birthplace of what we have now, which is all these unhealthy people, heart disease, and, the problems that people are having are to do with, the food scientists. I mean, it's a technology that the people are highly addicted to these foods. Yeah. And it's easy and it's cheap, like Uber Eats, all these things, people just get it delivered. And people think, I'm healthy. I just have, I eat these really simple foods. But if you're eating out, you're eating vegetable oils, because there's no kitchen that will spend the money on just using coconut oil or animal fats for cooking their food in. Yeah. I mean, you might get a slow cook thing where they haven't added any extra oil, but if they're searing or grilling or doing anything like that, you're guaranteed to be eating vegetable oils. And if you're eating those, they're rancid, and that stuff is just free radical damage. You're basically just damaging your body. And people think, they look at, you look at your body and like all your skin cells, every cell in your body has a membrane there. The cell membrane, if it doesn't have good quality saturated fats there, it's leaky. And all these disease processes that everybody is suffering from, it's because you're constantly replacing all your cells with these crappy fats. And that's why you get sunburn. Like, one of the things that I have seen over and over again where clients have taken all the vegetable oils out of their diet, they can go in the sun all day and not get burned. Yeah, really? Wow. Because their cells are actually healthy now. Wow. And this whole thing with obesity, there's a lot of people doing low carb diets, all of that. But if you're doing a low carb diet or a keto diet and you're having all these vegetable oils, it's not going to work. You might lose some weight, you'll lose some fat, but you're going to be unhealthy, man, like big time. Yeah. And then once you damage your mitochondria from consuming just all these vegetable oils that are rancid and processed and damaged, your mitochondria will not, that better oxidation pathway will be broken. So you can, do everything. You can fast, you can do whatever, but you're really going to struggle.
There you go. So let's just quickly recap. This was an incredible conversation. Definitely stay away from polyunsaturated fatty acids, Blakely. Yeah. And we all agree that organ meats are underrated. Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys, we could talk for hours on these topics with Azza, but frankly,
we'll get him back in again. Yeah, we'll go deeper on this topic, but
there simply won't be enough time. But what we want to do, if you want to get in touch or if you want to learn more from Aaron, he can be found on Instagram, is probably the easiest way, at Origin of Energy. And you can also book in a consult for yourself, either in person or online, with Aaron at originofenergy.com. He is an incredible movement coach, and he's an even more incredible lifestyle coach, quite frankly, like the way he comes at it, this stuff.
And I can guarantee you that if you do any work with Aaron, it's going to change your life. If you're willing to do the work and you are looking for answers from somebody that's really put in the time to research what a human body needs to thrive, Aaron has been my go-to guy for info for 20 years, and it's going to be a really good use of your time. So check him out at originofenergy.com. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Aaron, and
Yeah,
thanks,
thank you.
thanks, Phil.
My pleasure.
Thanks,
Cheers,
guys.
Thank you.
Awesome.